All right, everybody, here we go with the last video for Chapter 7. Going to finish up the notes with this video, starting with Section 6. Weekday news, information, and talk. Let's start off with the morning magazine shows. We're talking about the Today Show, Good Morning America, and CBS This Morning. And they kind of run the gamut in terms of what they cover, from soft entertainment to hard news and everything in between. Seems like most of the shows have kind of taken on a format similar to what CBS This Morning had started doing when it was first created, and that is starting off with kind of a hardcore news block and then kind of getting lighter and lighter as the show progresses. Like print magazines, they contain a series of feature articles. They have a table of contents or a billboard at the beginning of the show to tell viewers about what will be on that day. And then they're all bound together with a common cover and title. Valuable for promoting the network's primetime offerings as well. It's very easy for the networks to include promotional announcements about various broadcasts that it will be running within the morning news magazine shows. To some extent, the relative popularity of the leading morning shows is connected to the night before ratings. This is an issue of tuning inertia. In other words, what channel was on your TV when you turned your TV off last night? You wake up in the morning, turn your TV on. Whatever network you happen to be watching last night would, obviously it defaults to the last channel that was watched when you turn your TV on. And there are some people that will just stick with that particular channel. As far as daytime talk goes, the decline of the soap opera as a viable format and the inexpensive cost of mounting a talk show has given rise to the talk show. Again, for reasons that we've discussed in previous videos on this chapter, that you're not having to pay as many actors, there's not as much crunch time as far as production values and things like that. It's rather easy to be able to do a live tape experience of a talk show and to only pay a couple of people that are in the, for lack of a better word, cast. A host, a co-host, maybe a band, and that sort of thing. Far as evening news is concerned, evening newscasts give the broadcast networks prestige as major players in national and international politics. And today, evening newscasts face difficult competition from all sorts of different ways people get news nowadays, from cable, from websites, from radio, and all these sorts of things. It's no longer appointment viewing to catch up on what happened in the world at 6:30 on a given evening, because you could be catching up with what's happening in the world pretty much whenever you want, by whatever means you want. However, there still tends to be that tie-in with the reputation of a network with its news product. Affiliates benefit from evening newscasts because they promote the evening's prime time schedule. As you're watching the nightly news, they'll tell you what's coming up on that particular channel that evening. News personalities become crucial for winning the ratings competition. Many times, there is a factor of who is in the anchor's chair that is going to help a particular network with the ratings of its newscast. And a lot of the networks have started playing around with different types of personalities that are sitting in the anchor chair. You're seeing a lot more females on the evening newscast. You're seeing people from different cultures, different backgrounds. And it's something that the networks have been using to try to win over and gain and keep viewers. The networks have tried to distinguish the three newscasts from each other by creating segments within the newscast. So you get the top stories, and then you'll get these other stories that will have either a different ongoing theme to it, or that will create a certain amount of interest or go deeper into a particular issue as part of the newscast. And they use those things as hooks to try to get people to tune in and watch. Late night news, for the most part on the broadcast networks, this is pretty much covered by ABC's Nightline. It counter-programs the network and syndicated talk shows, and sometimes even wins late night ratings, especially if there's important news stories. So when Nightline first came about, it was 1979, 1980. It was during the Iran hostage situation, where the government of Iran was holding a bunch of people in an airplane hostage for, I believe it was 444 days from 1979 to 1980. And Nightline was developed as a way to get people caught up on what is happening with that situation. And after that hostage situation was over, they decided to continue the show. And it ran for many years against the 11:30 late night talk shows on NBC and CBS. And nowadays, with Jimmy Kimmel Live now competing against Jimmy Fallon and Stephen Colbert, they've pushed Nightline back to after Jimmy Kimmel Live at 12:35, so it's still being programmed against late night talk. It's just being programmed against the 12:30 late night shows instead of the 11:30 late night show. Overnight news, well, they may not get a lot of ratings, but even a 1 rating, which would be over 3 million people, is considered strong in overnight. It provides programming to networks at no charge, and it serves as lead-ins to the local morning newscasts. And it creates an audience that perhaps an infomercial would not. Now, some affiliates still choose to run infomercials overnight to try to make a little bit of money, but we're seeing more and more, especially with the current events kind of culture that we have, that the broadcast networks, at least, see value in providing a lot of news content. And that includes on the weekends. Weekend magazine shows are extensions of weekday magazine shows. So you've got Saturday versions of Good Morning America and CBS This Morning and the Today Show. You also have CBS Sunday Morning, which includes more art and science and Americana sort of pieces, a lot more human interest type of stuff that's a little more elevated from typical fare of like entertainment news and that sort of thing. Sunday news interviews, coverage of newsmakers and current events, usually revolving around politics, but they will cover other newsmakers as well. These shows remain on the air for 2 key reasons. First off, these programs have become important news events in and of themselves. The things that are said on these shows make headlines, turn into a newscast on a Monday, and a good portion of the newscast is going to be rehashing what so-and-so said on a particular Sunday news talk show. The programs also attract desirable upscale audiences, and as a result, they attract prestigious advertisers. So it's creating a show that reaches a particular demographic that advertisers especially want to reach out to. As far as children's programming goes, the rise of cable networks geared toward children have caused the downfall of children's programming on broadcast TV. However, the FCC does require broadcast TV stations to air 156 hours of EI programming annually on its station. We talked about that last chapter, but it is a mandate that broadcast TV stations carry this amount of programming geared specifically for educational and informational programming for children every year. Prior to September of 2019, the rule stated 3 hours a week. It now says 156 hours a year, which would average out to 3 hours a week. But TV networks now have different ways that they can spread out that programming. Children's programming is very much fad-driven. Children's interests are fickle and can change very quickly. The most popular children's programs are used in various marketing and merchandising strategies like toys and clothing and what you're going to get with your Happy Meal and all those sorts of things. And they use those as ploys to not only make money outside of the program, but to attract people to the program itself and continually have these characters and storylines in front of them. The production and development process of children's programming, first off, as it comes to animation, generally a particular episode will start about 12 months before broadcast, from concept to outline to artwork, and then the ordering of episodes. This was especially true as a lot of cartoons were hand-drawn. With computer-generated content, the timeline can be shorter, but they're generally worked on several months in advance of airing. Pilots are rare because of the high production cost and the long production time. So many times a concept will come along, if it's approved by the network, they will go ahead and run several episodes of a show. Generally, a season contract is for 13 episodes as opposed to 20 or 22 episodes. Live action programming for children is more attractive to networks in hopes of attracting older audiences and cheaper production costs as well. Programs are repeated several times because children's programs are less affected by repeats. A couple reasons for that. The audience changes frequently with a new generation of youngsters to discover even old programs. So it's very possible that a season of youngsters that watched all the shows have moved on to something else, and you've got a new season of youngsters that become of age and interest to watch that show, and they will watch those same episodes. Also, children enjoy the familiarity of program reruns more than adults do. Ask any parent that has certain episodes of their favorite cartoons or favorite children's programming that just continually run on repeat, and how often their DVRs or videotapes or DVD discs or whatever they have just continually run out. Kids don't care. They like what they know, and they will watch it over and over and over and over again. Now, late night talk and variety shows. Elements of late night talk have similar attributes to those of magazine shows, but they include a mix of comedy and news commentary. If you want a good overview of the recent history of late night talk, there's a good section in your textbook that kind of hashes through that. The late night talk realm has had a history of strong rivalries and bitterness and certain amounts of creativity to it, that almost kind of reads as a soap opera, to be honest. But it is a fascinating one nonetheless, as you know, how we got to where the late night talk shows are today, and who is host of those shows, how they got to be the host of those shows, the content that is on them, and all those sorts of things. Late night on the weekends, a lot of competition. Basically, well, here's the thing. The demographic that people want are not at home. So you really got to figure out what you're going to do with this time slot. And it can be everything from syndicated movies to reruns of primetime shows, and sometimes even just going straight to infomercials and that sort of thing. The biggest players for the late night weekends, well, these days it would pretty much still be Saturday Night Live. It's a show that is still talked about after 45 years. Others have tried to give competition to it. Probably one of the best ones that had a pretty good run was Mad TV. But you do every once in a while see that there's different variety shows, comedy shows that come up that make themselves available on a Saturday night in the late night hours and have a certain amount of success to them. Now, the effects of consolidation and cable on all this stuff. Local stations now realize that they can generate much more revenue from syndicated programming or even from infomercials than they can from the compensation offered by networks for clearing their programs. And this has reduced clearance levels for non-prime day parts for network offerings. One of the big examples of this is that when you go from market to market, not every market is airing the soap operas that are offered by the networks. Or, like in the case here in Raleigh, they may air it at a different time slot, which is what happens with, I think it's The Bold and the Beautiful on WNCN, airing it at 4 p.m. here in the Raleigh market, as opposed to other places where it airs at 12:30 or 1 o'clock. They may determine that the shows the networks are offering don't necessarily fit their market, don't fit their audience, that there's a show that they can get from syndication that would help their bottom line a whole lot better, and they will opt for that, especially where there is no real punishment to the affiliates to decide to not to run network fare, even though the networks would really, really, really like them to. So you are starting to see more of a trend of the networks having less and less power outside of prime time. However, the corporate owners of the networks are increasingly also the owners of cable networks, local affiliates, and syndicated programming. So in those cases, you tend to see a lot more cooperation between the local station and the network. And even in the cases where you don't see that, there are other options for the networks to be able to clear the programming it produces. And several non-primetime network programs continue to have loyal audiences. However, the problem is that these audiences are aging and they are not being replaced by younger viewers. The younger viewers are less and less at home. If they are at home, they're engaging in other activities, and they just don't have the wherewithal to sit and consume the content of the game show or the daytime talk show, or especially the soap opera anymore. The interest is just not there. If it is there, it's there in a much smaller fashion than what it was in generations past. So there you go. There is non-primetime programming on the broadcast networks, and that finishes up your notes. As per usual, make sure you turn in your notes and your study questions, complete the pre-class questionnaire on Blackboard, and join us as we get together to talk about this chapter. Love to hear your insights on what you think of all that is happening on the broadcast networks when it comes to non-primetime programming.